Lane Kiffin is a simple fix away from unlocking Jaxson Dart and the Ole Miss offense.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we dive into the biggest question surrounding the Ole Miss quarterback, Jaxson Dart. Why hasn't he looked right the last couple of weeks? The answer might be simpler than we think. He's just a little bit uncomfortable. Ole Miss needs to let Dart play to his strengths. Lane Kiffin needs to dial in on the short to long approach, giving the offense time to build methodically. Drive the ball down the field methodically, let Dart find his rhythm, and trust the big plays will come naturally. When Dart is in sync, we've seen how dangerous he can be. Don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer more perspectives on the SEC and, yes, even Ole Miss. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Really interesting stuff. This being a bye week, I was able to dive into a little bit of self-scout and look at some advanced stats and things like that. And I didn't expect to find what I found. And it showed me, for a staff that is really locked into analytics, I think they're going to see the same thing this week. But my take is pretty simple. I think Ole Miss can be pretty good and can unlock Jaxson Dart with a simple fix around getting him in rhythm and using his strengths. I will tell you what his strengths are in this thing, because the stats clearly point those out, and all quarterbacks need to get into rhythm, and also it'll help the offensive line if they do this as well. Lots of interesting stuff. Now, here's my point. Ole Miss has thrown the ball downfield, over 20 yards downfield, as much as they have the entirety of 2023. They've already passed 2023 in throwing the ball downfield, the duck and chucks, the low percentage passes. And Ole Miss, believe it or not, is converting at about the same rate that they did a year ago. They're just relying on it way too much. Jaxson Dart has 14 incompletions this year inside of 10 yards. Left, center, and right. Inside of 10 yards, there's 14 incompletions. He had 33 last year in 2023 over the full season. So he's actually been more efficient in the short throws this season than he was a year ago. The deep ball, Ole Miss is too reliant on it. And I think what has happened is how good Trey Harris is kind of blinding Ole Miss to do it. It's like, hey, Jaxson Dart drops back. It's like, well, Trey Harris is down there somewhere. And everybody knows that Trey is a really good player. And if you look at Trey's stats this season, he's sitting at 59 catches, 987 yards, and 6 touchdowns right now. And when you look at that compared to what Jaxson Dart has done, he's at 151 for 215, 2,384 yards, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Nearly half the touchdowns, about 40% of the yards, and about a third of the receptions are to Trey Harris this season. Ole Miss is too reliant right now on Trey Harris, and everybody knows it. If you watch the LSU game and pay attention, go back and look at the LSU game. They're in the second half where the defense just sinks deeper than the deepest. Don't let anybody get behind them, and they realize that Ole Miss is not going to throw underneath. They're just not going to do it. There was a play in overtime, I believe it was, that Caden Priestcorn was just wide open and could have walked into the end zone after 1st and 25. So this is a real deal that other teams have scouted Ole Miss to the point where they just don't even need to worry about this stuff. And when you look at what Ole Miss does well, it's exactly what other teams aren't looking for. Let me break this down. This season, These are Jaxson Dart's zones this season by outside the numbers, inside the numbers, right and left. If you look at him over 20 yards, that's that top quadrant. He is not completing over 50% in any areas. He's 40% outside right with no touchdowns, 87 NFL passer rating, 20 for 25 in the middle zone, 477 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's where the LSU pick happened over the weekend. And then out left is 5 of 17, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns, 118.4 NFL passer rating. Ole Miss is going deep. And when you look at what they did a year ago, Ole Miss has almost already hit the deep shots that they did a year ago. And they're completing them at about the same clip. Everything is about the same thing. Passes, interceptions, touchdowns, the whole 9 yards. Ole Miss is on pace for having exactly those numbers at the end of the year. So whenever you have that, why force it? A rhythm is very important for a quarterback. A quarterback getting into rhythm is huge. It's massive. It helps their confidence. We've all seen exactly what Jaxson Dart can do. And my thing, and this, the simple fix that Lane Kiffin can do that can completely fix Ole Miss's offense will be the use of short passes in the middle of the field, specifically inside 20 yards, inside the numbers, and inside 10 yards outside the numbers, to where there's a pyramid that goes up. Here's the pyramid right now. If Ole Miss tackles inside of that pyramid, they have a chance to completely unlock the offense. If you look inside 10 yards, like I told you, Jaxson Dart has 14 incompletions. If you include that middle zone from 10 to 20 yards, he's got 19 incompletions and a nearly perfect passer rating in that middle zone. Why isn't Ole Miss attacking this? If Ole Miss attacked what Jaxson Dart was best at, he would obviously handle it well. He would grow in confidence, and the deep shots downfield would come. I think that Trey Harris would get all the catches that he needed to catch if they used the middle of the field correctly. And with the tight ends that Ole Miss have, with the wide receivers that Ole Miss have, they have all of the weapons necessary to take advantage of this outright. This is what Jaxson Dart is best at. This is what Ole Miss probably needs to start out doing. And doing this means that you're not going to have 50-second drives for a touchdown, 2-minute drives for a touchdown. You're going to drive the ball downfield. You're going to start worrying about staying on schedule. It's going to help the offensive line because they're not going to be asked to block as long. It's going to help the entirety of the offense. It's going to help the RPO game because you're going to have a fresher situation for the offensive line. Jaxson Dart getting into a rhythm and more comfortable, along with the threat, just the threat of what Trey Harris can do going back deep. And I think Ole Miss can completely open up the defense of whoever they're playing with, starting with the Oklahoma Sooners, who are pretty good on defense. They're pretty good at shutting you down. Brent Venables gives you different looks. It's going to be important in this game that Jaxson Dart does what makes him comfortable. And he is obviously comfortable in this area of the field. And this underneath pyramid is where he is at his most comfortable in this Ole Miss offense. So don't focus so much outside the numbers. They're doing that a lot this year. Long yardage is happening. Do not force balls down the field. Just slowly matriculate the ball down the field into the end zone, and we'll see exactly what happens. I mean, it's not totally, outside the realm of possibility of what can happen. The offense likely will start to find its groove when they start moving the ball with any consistency. Against LSU, whenever they threw the ball short in this LSU game, they moved the ball down the field. It wasn't until they went back to the duck and chucks, the long throws, the long low percentage passes that got problematic. And I understand, looking at LSU secondary, you thought you could take advantage of them. I get that. I understand that entirely. But there needed to be a plan B. And them not being a plan B kind of led to what happened. Anyway, Jaxson Dart finding his rhythm, it could be the key to unlocking more than just big plays. It could take the pressure off the offensive line too. Stay tuned to see how a hot start from Dart could change everything about the Rebels. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Ole Miss is currently a pick'em for the bye week. I'm just kidding, of course. But tune in next week to see exactly how the Rebels stack up against the Oklahoma Sooners. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on this same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Okay, we talked about this. Whenever these short passes happen, whenever the offense moves quicker, whenever you're not asking a 350-pound offensive lineman to hold a run block, because that's essentially what they're doing, hold a run block for 4 seconds, you need to do something a little bit and vary the tempo. This is the Southeastern Conference, okay? When the defensive line knows exactly where the quarterback's going to be and know that they have 4 seconds to get back there, they're going to more often than not. And it doesn't matter who you have playing offensive line. They're doing that at the moment. While you're waiting for these extremely long, slow developing plays to happen, the offensive line is doing what they can to protect. And honestly, they're doing a fairly decent job. They didn't do a decent job at LSU, but over the course of the year, I mean, it's pretty commendable, all things considered, with them trying to take deep shot after deep shot after deep shot and letting those guys run wind sprints up and down the field. Ole Miss going to a quicker game to where you do not have to hold those run blocks. You do not have to just sit there and try and make it work, zone blocking one way or another. You have a chance to open up the defense and put the fear in them that they have to work the other directions. Remember, anybody that has watched this show for any period of time knows that I've referred to when Lane Kiffin's offense is running well, it's torturing linebackers. Linebackers just can't be right. There's too many options. Right now, there aren't any options. The linebackers just get to sink back and just keep going back. If you go back to the interception thrown, if you go back to the 1st and 25 and look what the LSU linebackers did, there was a 20-yard space between the first linebacker and the line of scrimmage. They were just rushing with the defensive ends and defensive linemen and dropping everybody back deeper than the deepest to not get beat. Now, they did a lot of blitzing and things like that, but they were clear to be deeper than the deepest at all time. Ole Miss running some angle routes, some Texas routes, heck, even running some mesh concepts with crossing wide receivers at 5 yards, getting the ball to Juice Wells. We're going to talk about this in the next segment, in a position where he can run after the catch, which is his strong suit. They're using him like DK Metcalf, but they need to be using him like A.J. Brown, if you want to look at it. But doing that would make the offense a little bit more explosive. It would make the defense worry about what's going on and take some of those double and triple teams off of Trey Harris. Quit throwing 50-50 balls 40 yards downfield to Juice Wells. Yeah, he's a good receiver. He can do all that. But that's a very low percentage play. And we know that's a low percentage play. We need to get back simply. Just get back to being on schedule. 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2. Anything lower than that's a win. If you do that, if you operate efficiently inside of 15 to 20 yards, if you do that, nobody's going to be able to stop you. And you're going to still be able to hit the big plays because everybody is going to have to worry about what's in front of them. The linebackers aren't going to be able to run out. And for goodness sakes, find another running play besides the inside zone. Right now, running the ball is just an inside zone play and that little toss play out of the shotgun. That's the two running play. There's no counter. There's no variability in the running game, so you know exactly what Ole Miss is going to do. If Ole Miss runs the ball, it's going to be here or there. One of those two places, if we cover, is going to be fine. There needs to be a little bit of variability in the run game. You take that with the Jaxson Dart pass, protecting the offensive line, and this offense is going to get going again. Jaxson Dart's going to get his swagger back. Jaxson Dart's going to quit forcing the ball into Trey Harris. Jaxson Dart is going to make the best of the situation. And you have a couple of games that are very, very winnable for Ole Miss, especially that Oklahoma game, which is a Realtree game, which you go to College Corner or College Corner Store right now, .com right now to check out exactly what they have. I think the new Realtree Galaxy hoodies are about to get into the stock. So pay attention there with Scott and College Corner Store. But this is an interesting, simple fix. We're not asking for anything crazy. We're not asking for anything weird. We're not even really breaking down and getting into the weeds. I like to joke about getting into the weeds, but this isn't necessarily getting into the weeds. Anybody that watches football knows that Ole Miss is throwing the ball deep too much. They look like the Oakland Raiders. And the Oakland Raiders, when it works, hey, it looked great. Whenever it didn't work, it did not look so good. Right now, Ole Miss is there. They need to figure out what's going on. Again, this is a bye week, and during a bye week, a lot of self-scout happens. And self-scout happening is probably a very good thing, because if we all notice this is happening, SEC defensive coordinators absolutely are noticing it's happening. When you look at what Kentucky did, what LSU did, honestly, what South Carolina tried to do and not giving up explosive plays. Everybody, they're doing whatever they can to not give up explosive plays, because they do realize that Ole Miss is so explosive play dependent right now. If they just do that, they're going to be in the game. It's going to be a game as long as you don't give up 65-yard touchdowns. And SEC defensive coordinators, all of them are doing that. What is the answer to that? That is the question. What is the answer to not having explosives available to you? The answer is driving the football. The answer is being on schedule. The answer is a plan B. Hit the big shots whenever you can. Time them up. Find something in a certain way that you can exploit what they're doing. But in the meantime, protect that offensive line. Protect that running game. Use the quick game on the field. Daquan Wright, Caden Prescorn, move Juice Wells to slot. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Caden Lee, Jordan Watkins, even Trey Harris at times. Balance up that distribution. You know, Mike Leach, God rest his soul, he had a word for balance. Not a word for balance. He had a definition of balance. And it wasn't run pass. In football forever, they talked about run pass. It was about distribution to every offensive skill player on the field. He wanted everybody to have about the same number of touches. If you do that, he thought it would work really well. Right now at Ole Miss, like we told you, Trey Harris has about 40% of the passing receptions right now for Jaxson Dart. Ole Miss has to get away from that. When they look at self-scout, they have to do that, because what that does is it makes your offense essentially impotent. And whenever you need what you need on that offense, you can't have Trey Harris. You can't have him be the 1, 2, and 3 options at a time. You need to be able to kind of go through a little bit of a progression, a triangle, old style football it a little bit, and get some first downs. When Ole Miss gets first downs, they get really dangerous. Whenever they run the ball well, they get really dangerous. And it was good to see Ulysses Bentley against LSU get on the field. He was our Roy player of the game. We donated $100 into his Roy account. But that is important. You know, before we do this, this is the triangle that I think Ole Miss needs to function in. If Ole Miss attacks this area, that's basically inside the hash marks or inside the numbers on the field up to 20 yards and over to the sideline at about 10-5. And that is so you can just throw the hitches, the RPOs like that, that's available. If Ole Miss attacks in this area, the offensive line is going to do well. It's going to open up the running game. It's going to make it to where the defense doesn't know exactly what they need to defend, and it's going to make the life a little bit easier for Trey Harris. That is what attacking right here would do. We'll see exactly how it goes. Anyway, Is it time to move Juice Wells to the slot? Shifting him inside can unlock new possibilities for the offense. Stay tuned to find out how this could change. This change could give the Rebels an edge. Hims is changing the men's healthcare game by providing access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. With doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and generics for Viagra and Cialis at up to 95% less, Hims has an option for you. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for an uncomfortable doctor's visit. Just answer a few questions on their website, and a licensed medical provider will determine the right treatment. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging, and it's completely free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of subscribers, Hims has helped many men regain their confidence, and they can help you out too. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon to explore your personalized ED treatment options. Remember, the products mentioned are chewable compounded products that have not been verified by the FDA for safety or effectiveness. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider to determine if they are appropriate, and restrictions apply. See the website for full details and important safety information. Subscription is required and pricing varies based on product and plan. Take control of your performance and get Hims today so you can feel confident when it matters most. Heck, if you look at what we're talking about today, this is basically Hims for the offense, what we're talking about. So check them out right now. Now, there's another thing that I think that Ole Miss needs to look at in this game. Now, this is not any type of a shot at Caden Lee or Jordan Watkins or anything like that. I think Ole Miss needs to reshuffle a little bit the wide receiver units that they have. And Juice Wells needs to be playing in the slot. And this is the reason why. If Ole Miss is going to attack that triangle, and I'll bring that up again, that triangle. If Ole Miss is going to attack that with mesh concepts and bubbles and jailbreaks and outs and all of that stuff, Juice Wells moving to the slot makes a whole bunch of sense, because Juice Wells is really known for his run after the catch. That's what he made his bones on at South Carolina, was his run after catch. He is a very aggressive catcher of the ball, but his run after the catch is what really got him going in 2022. And that's one of the reasons he was so dangerous against Tennessee and Clemson. So moving him to the slotting, putting him next to Trey Harris will help with double teams. It will still open up the middle of the field, and I think the offense could really open up. Now, you have Caden Lee, who has experience playing out wide as well, as does Jordan Watkins. I think you can use a lot of the same players, but I also think like Aiden Williams. It might be a good fit to put Aiden Williams out at the other wide receiver position. And you have Aiden Williams, and you have Trey Harris out wide, and you have Juice Wells in the slot with a Caden Prieskorn or Daquan Wright, and you just kind of let those guys cook. This is an area of the field that's going to be attacked that Jaxson Dart is very comfortable attacking. This is a whole bunch of athletes on the field that have a chance to take a 5-yard reception and turn it into a 60-yard reception. And doing so is going to completely unlock this offense, especially if a running back like Ulysses Bentley starts getting more carries as the season moves forward, which honestly should have been getting carries as we speak anyway. But I also want to see Rashad Amos, what he looks like. Ole Miss needs a running back of that style. They need a thumper. They need somebody to be that guy on short yardage that's not J.J. Pegues. You do not need situations to where you're running inside zone with a 180-pound running back and a wide receiver in to block a defensive end one-on-one. That's not a situation that's going to win. And just like as it was predictable, the defensive end defeated the block and tackled the 180-pound running back short of getting the first down. That can't happen. Somebody like Rashad Amos would be beneficial to this team. And everybody's going to talk about, well, does he have a fumbling problem? At that point, you're just guessing. He did fumble the ball 2 or 3 times a year ago at Miami of Ohio, but 3 of them, I think most of them, all of them but one, however many it was in the Cure Bowl playing in a downpour. Just didn't work. It was like a bar of soap type deal. He ended up putting the ball on the ground. It happened. But it would be interesting to see him get his turn playing running back as well. I would give anything right now for a Snoop Connor. We thought we had a Snoop Connor. When we looked at the players that Ole Miss brought in during the transfer portal window, we thought a Snoop Connor was there. We all talked about how this offensive line group, or this running back group, gets to have the same look as the 2021 group that had Henry Parrish, who was on this team. And then that team had Jerry and Ely. This one has Ulysses Bentley. Everybody was okay with that. And they thought Amos would be that thumper, that Snoop Connor type player that could help this offense. That hasn't materialized at this point. Ole Miss is playing about the same number of players that they've always played. And for better or worse, I mean, that's not a very efficient use of the Grove Collective. We'll see exactly how it goes. I do think that Juice Wells playing slot has the ability to unlock Trey Harris, to unlock the middle of the field, to unlock Caden Prescorn. Your whole offense is going to get more effective with Juice Wells playing the slot receiver. I think Juice Wells at South Carolina, like I said, he made his bones run after the catch. It was one of those things where they even talked about putting him at running back some because he could run the ball so well. His run after the catch with the football in his hand was so impressive. And I think Ole Miss is missing an opportunity to use him by just sending him on go routes and treating him like DK Metcalf. I'm not 100% I understand that, but that's what they're doing at the moment. So we'll see. We'll see if Ole Miss against Oklahoma has a more varied game plan, if they use that middle of the field area that we talked about today, and if this offense gets a little bit quicker and more varied and they kind of, ratchet it down to inside 20 yards instead of over 20 yards downfield to where the majority of the attack plays are happening. We'll see exactly how it goes. Anyway, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC Podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And also exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider. It is the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's a texting program that sends you notifications on everything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. And we're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description. For those of you watching on YouTube, we're going to send you Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.